Records and music labels.
120 years ago, there were 3 major music labels. Now there are also 3. Did anything change? In this episode, we will continue our story from the first one. Towards the end of the 19th century, sound recording and reproducing devices became quite popular. There were many kinds, but eventually, during the first decade of the 20th century, gramophone records emerged as the best format. Nothing else survived the First World War. This had several consequences. 1. Music in public places became cheap. Instead of having a band or an orchestra, all that was needed was a gramophone with several records. 2. While previously one performer was only performing at one place at a time, with records, it was possible for a popular performer to be publicly performed at many. Gradually, it was the performers, not the authors, that were becoming celebrities. Probably the most important difference was the emergence of a new kind of business, a record label. It flowered as music was becoming increasingly accessible, but back then, just as it is now, it was really concentrated with 3 major labels. We will not go deep into performing artists, labels and neighboring rights in this series, but stick to music writers and publishers. However, as musical works started to be recorded, new rights emerged, mechanical. Actually, this is not completely true. In a way they existed for music boxes and similar devices that made music. But with records, it became an important source of income. Mech had its low when the sales of mechanical media reduced at the turn of this century, but it came back once download and streaming were regulated. However, it introduced a new problem, still not resolved. Record metadata mostly does not reference musical works. More in this video.
About the biggest issue in music rights, matching recordings and compositions.
We'll make a practical example now in free open source Django Music Publisher. The link to the playlist about this software is in the top right corner. We will open the work we entered last time, called Love. As you can see, it now has the ISWC, which was sent to us as a response to our ISWC request. Well, not in reality, but this is a cartoon after all. Anyway, we will now add a recording to it by scrolling to the recordings section and pressing on Add Recording. We will skip the recording and version titles, as our recording is also called Love. We will enter ISRC. Unlike ISWC, which is assigned by a central authority, ISRC is assigned by labels. Central authority assigns the prefix, in our case JMK40. We do not need to enter the dashes, but we can. DMP will strip them. Then we put in the year, 19, and the 5-digit recording number in this year, so 00001. We'll also assign a label and a performing artist. Entering new labels and artists is similar to adding writers, only simpler. And save. In the work list view, we can see that this work is in 1 CWR. Remember, we made the ISWC request last week. And has 1 recording, the one we just entered. DMP also has a more label-oriented view for recordings. We click on the link in the recordings column, and then open the recording by clicking on ID in the first column. Please note that the work label is bold, which means that this field is required. One cannot have a recording that is not based on a musical work. Software should reflect this. And recording metadata should always reference works. But, it rarely does. In the first season, we called this the biggest issue in the industry. The link to that Friday Fun video is in the top right corner now. I almost forgot, last week I said we would create our first batch registration. We are just doing it for love. On the home menu, click on Add next to CWR Exports. Select CWR 3.0 Registration. In the Works field, we will select Love, and press on Save. Let's see what it looks like. Remember, the ISWC request from the last seminar episode was very simple in comparison. The actual transaction for Love only had 2 rows, one for the title, Love, and one for the CA, John Smith. Work registrations are quite more complex. Besides more data about the work itself, there is data about the original publisher and their shares. And then again, John Smith and his shares, followed by the artist and recording data we just entered. And this is still a very simple registration example. In the next video, we will start covering publishing agreements. This video is part of our music metadata series, which is being updated. Today we also mentioned these two videos and used DMP for our practical examples. Please share with people interested in music publishing. Support us by thumbs up. Subscribe and hit the bell, so you don't miss our next video. Thanks. See you in that one.